What's up, guys? It's Carnegie here. Today I'm going to talk to you about Fury Warrior tanking in dungeons. And essentially, this is going to be a guide on how to hold AoE threat, or at least improve your chances of holding AoE threat in dungeons. Now, an important caveat when I'm making this video is that in order to Fury tank, you can't be a boosted character wearing boosted gear. The communal gear set, it might work for you, but chances are if you're wearing that gear, it'll be better off if you just roll prot. Or maybe even go arms. Arms might be good. But here we go. My gear set is currently T2.5. I've got a couple off pieces like defense. I did get this out of the Mana Tombs, and of course I have Thunder Fury, so that's going to change the game for me a little bit. And I'm geared pretty significantly for hit, just because we're fighting mobs that are like 2 or 3 levels higher than us, at least at the time. So for me, in my case, it was a lot better to just gear for hit and make sure I can actually hit the mobs, because that improves rage generation and of course threat generation. Now, what is the optimal spec for Fury Warrior tanking? Well, here we've got 5 points in the cruelty tree, just because those critical strikes will lead to your like higher rampage uptime. The more crits you're getting, the more rampage, the more attack power, the more threat. That's the basic formula here. Then there's improved demo shout, which reduces the AP of the mobs, which means you're getting less hits, except you're not going to worry about that too much. That's going to be like the very last part of your rotation, and that's only if you're doing a significantly large pull where you're worried about actually dying. Like, you're worried the damage from the mobs is going to be too much, and in that case will be the time where you're putting on the shield. Anytime you put on the shield and immediately shield block, demo shout following that. Now, I've got Piercing Howl specifically for in the Mana Tombs. There are those leeches that explode when they die, and I'll show you my strategy for that later on, maybe in another video if you guys are interested. But I use this to charge in, build threat, Piercing Howl, and run away from them, kite them around the room, while my ranged and the other DPS take them down. Now we've got 5 out of 5 commanding presence, just because of course the attack power bonus is really good, and then later once I get commanding shout, that like more health, more better, you know what I mean? I do have improved cleave just because in this build we're going to be spamming cleave a lot. We're not going to use heroic strike. That's only going to be when there's up to 2 targets. That's it. And even on 2 targets, it would be better to cleave. But anything higher than that, a single target fight, we're going to be spamming cleave as our like rage dump. Now, I only have 4 out of 4 dual wield. That's because I went down the tree first, picked these talents, went to arms, picked some of these talents, and then I went over to get dual wield. And of course, get 3 out of 3 tactical mastery. The more rage you can have when you swap stances, because we're going to be doing that a lot, the more rage you can keep between stances, the more abilities you're going to be, it'll just flow a lot better if you have that talent. It's not necessary to go down and get Defiance. I know sometimes you're going to feel like it would be a lot easier if you did have Defiance, but trust me, it's not a significant talent. There's much better stuff you can get. Like, I would rather have Iron Will, reduce chance to resist stun and charm, than actually have Defiance in dungeons. It's really not that big. Now, absolutely, in Rage, if we get crit, we get melee damage bonus, more threat. Sweeping Strikes is absolutely pivotal to this. This build is solely built around Sweeping Strikes and Whirlwind, and you'll see in a minute. Then we have Weapon Mastery, reduce the chance for your attacks to be dodged by 2%, which is really good. You really don't want to be dodged and parried all the time. And reduces all disarm effects by 50%. Solid talent. All around solid talent. Even for PvP, that talent is super useful. We have Flurry, which is of course going to be the main. That's always been the staple of a Fury Warrior build, is trying to manage and optimize Fury uptime. We've got our Bloodthirst, A lot of people call this a like a flex point. Like, it's not something you absolutely need, especially if your gear can satisfy the hit requirements for whatever content you're doing. But I personally just like to have it just because I want to make sure I'm going to be hitting these mobs as frequently as possible. 2 out of 2 improved whirlwind reduces it by 2 seconds, which makes the cooldown for it 8 seconds. Really good. It smooths out the rotation. Make sure you always have a button to press. We're going to skip improved berserker stance because we don't need it. Increases attack power and reduces threat caused while in berserker stance. Later on, I'm going to show you exactly why this is a problem. This is something you do not want to have while you, specifically while you're leveling in tanking dungeons. We're going to be swapping over to berserker stance and popping whirlwind a lot, but it's going to be a significant part of our damage and our AoE threat, especially on the pool. We're essentially going to be popping sweeping strikes, popping whirlwind on the pool, and then I'll show you the rest, but it's fantastic. Fury Warrior is popping off now. It's not the best AoE tank, but my god is it the most fun to play. We are smashing buttons the entire time we're there. The whole time I'm in a dungeon, my brain is lighting up. It's like Disney on New Year's. We are just popping off. Synapse is firing. It's so good. And of course, Rampage, you 100% want Rampage up as close to 100% of the time as you can. I understand there's going to be a lot of downtime between pools as healers get mana and stuff like that, so you're going to have to try and learn to manage your mana, or manage their mana and manage your rage effectively, so that every time you go into the pool, you'll be as close to capped out as possible and always have that Rampage uptime. Now, that's the difficult part with Rampage, is that it only lasts 30 seconds. So you'll need to try and manage that as much as you can. We'll go over to the arms tree. 5 out of 5 parry chance. That's just to improve our parry haste. That's not really for any sort of mitigation thing. That's specifically just rage building in mind. Now we're gonna get 3 out of 3 improved thunderclap, and this may have been a meme in classic, but now I really hope you guys max out your thunderclap, because that damage is actually going to be pretty good now. They've reworked it, and now it also works in defensive stance, so if you're a warrior, make sure you put thunderclap in defensive stance as well as battle stance. And then these two are flex points. You can put them in improved heroic strike or improved charge, I guess, if you want more rage on the pool. Do not put it in improved rend. It's not going to help you. It's not going to accomplish anything. That's the one talent I would say ignore 100%. But I specifically went with Iron Will. Well, I personally went with Iron Will, just because there are multiple stun and charm effects in these dungeons that we're currently doing and trying to grind up to 70. So I figured the better chance I have of resisting that stuff, then the better, like, the more smooth the run will be overall. Okay, so now that we've gone over the spec, let's actually see how this works. Let me mute that. Okay. So ideally, you want to have Rampage up, you want to have your Battle Shout, all that. I did kind of mess up a little bit here, but this is a great pool to demonstrate the fundamentals of how Fury AoE tanking works in this game. You definitely want to dual wield, but always have a macro ready to put on a shield whenever you need it, because there are going to be some times where your health starts to get a little low and you need to give your healer some support. So you charge in, swap to Fury, Berserker stance, hit the whirlwind on that pull, and then you're going to thunderclap. And then from there, your entire rotation is thunderclap, swap, whirlwind. Then you're definitely going to want to cleave to dump your rage. Cleave as often as you can. Make sure you keep this going. I should have popped sweeping strikes at the beginning of this pull, but as you can see a little bit later on, I'll swap over, pop rage on sweeping strikes, hit another whirlwind, swap back to defensive stance, thunderclap. Now let me back up a little bit, because this makes a good point. These little arcane fiends here, as you can see, they only have 1.6k health, and as a tank, it's really easy to fall into that habit of, I need to pick up every single mob. Like, if I don't have aggro on every target, then I'm a failure as a tank. And that's not the way this works. That's not how World of Warcraft is. Especially when you get to pools like this, or even larger pools. it's very unlikely you're gonna have threat on every single target, especially ones that get summoned later on in the fight. Then another important point is do not chase mobs around the room. Whenever you start an instance, please explain to your party members, like, hey, if you get aggro on a target and you need help, you need me to pick it up, please bring it to me. Because let's look at the logistics of this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different mobs on me, and I pick up the 7th one, but I missed the 8th. So the 8th one is gonna get attacked. It's I believe our Shadow Priest and Boomkin are gonna dot them up. Maybe even our maybe even our Hunter hits him. Well, actually, he's our the Shaman's our healer. We got a Boomkin, Shadow Priest, Hunter, me. So this one's gonna get aggro on them, and he's gonna start going that way. I don't even make an attempt to chase it because I would rather keep aggro on all of these targets than chase down that one guy and risk losing threat on these. I need to continue building threat on these targets so that everything doesn't just go absolutely haywire. So that's the philosophy with that. Don't chase one particular mob, because that's going to make you more likely to lose all of these, and then instead of one target, like instead of not having aggro on one target, you're going to lose aggro on 3, maybe even 4, and then people are going to be running around and panicking, and it's going to mess up the pool. So stay in a static position, maybe move around a little bit if there's some mechanics you need to avoid, or if your healer is being attacked, that's the only exception. And maybe even communicate with your DPS like, hey, protect the healer, he's getting attacked right now. Or if he's close by, make a move, do a quick taunt, thunderclap, swap, whirlwind, continue your rotation to try and build threat on that target while also not losing threat on the targets you already have. So that's an important point I really wanted to make, just because I fall into the habit too. I do it sometimes too. I've caught myself many times running halfway across the room just to pick up a mob, and then by the time I've gotten that mob, the whole time you're chasing it, the DPS are still attacking the other targets. So by the time you pick up that guy, you'll turn around and see now you've lost, instead of just one guy, now you've lost 2. So now you have to go chase down 2 mobs. By the time you pick up those, you turn around again and you've lost aggro on more targets. So stay in your lane, stay in your zone, pick up the mobs, and explain to the DPS and the healers that if you need help, bring it to me, because that's the easiest way to handle this smoothly. So we'll continue on. As you see, constantly switching over, whirlwind, cleave, thunderclap, popping off. I should have interrupted the heal that was on Skull just now, but I was busy in the rotation. It's really good if you can, but it's, just tell your DPS to do it mostly because you just really need threat. And now, as you can see, I've already equipped a shield, not because I need to. I've just noticed that the healer's starting to get low on mana, and I just want to make the pull a little easier. Once you have threat on all these targets, and once you have a decent threat lead, you may as well just swap to a shield, because it'll just increase your mitigation. You're not losing as much health, the healer's not using as much mana. It'll make your runs a lot smoother, because from there you can start chain pulling mobs, and overall it'll increase how fast you can complete this dungeon, just because it eliminates that sort of downtime. Also, a major mistake I made just now was I dumped all of my rage before the next pull. So what we usually do is we pull up both of these mobs, this pack of mana worms you see on the left, and then that little 3-pack you see on the right around that casket. We pick them both up, I'll generate threat, and then I'll use Piercing Howl and just kite them around the room while these guys AoE and just single target them down. So they'll burst them down, I'll have a threat lead, and I'll kite them. And then if one gets away, that's fine. They have Piercing Howl, it's 50% movement speed slow, so I can always go and taunt it real quick, bring it back into the group, bring it back, bloodthirst it, and that's not a problem. The reason why we kite them is because they explode when they die, and if I'm in the middle of that pack when like 3 or 4 start dying, that's going to take a big chunk of my health, and it actually has killed me a couple of times when I messed up the kiting path. But going back to the original point though, is this, like, you need to be generating rage, and you need to have as much rage as you can before the next pull. That way you can charge in, pop sweeping strikes, swap to berserker stance, whirlwind, swap to defensive stance, thunderclap, and then start cleaving. And that's the ideal build. So I hope you guys enjoy it. One point I do need to make though is that Fury tanking is only going to get you so far. I personally swapped to deep prot in Shattered Halls, or not Shattered Halls, Sethic Halls, just because with my group I was taking way too much damage, and then the fear mechanics and stuff was making it really hard to just have a smooth and consistent run. So that was around level 66, I think. Yeah, level 66. We started doing Sethic Hall runs for rep and XP farming. So it's not for everyone. This build isn't for everyone. It's not like the meta or anything like that. I wouldn't even personally recommend it, just because deep prot is actually really good now. It's not like some noobish meme. It's actually the go-to. So this is specifically for people that have decent gear and have a good group that can actually manage it effectively. And then a lot of it comes down to your gameplay as well. You need to be on point doing this. I'm talking Thunderclap and Whirlwind on cooldown. Keep it going. Know when to swap to a shield. Always keep an eye on your healer's mana. Always pull rage before you do the pull. And just kind of do everything you can to make sure everything goes smoothly. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll be making more content in the future. You can always check me out live on twitch.tv/Carnegie. It's the same name as my YouTube channel name. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys there. Have a good one.